pretty mean shocker setup. Cranking out 12 joules of power, and right now we're powering about 2 miles of fence with this old rusted wire, so it's pulling a pretty hefty amount of electricity out of this shocker. But yep, pretty easy. 100-watt solar panel right there, charging a 12-volt battery through, if you can see it right under there, through a pulse width modulator, going into a Cyclops 12 joule solar shocker. So yeah, this is pretty mean. Let's see what we're actually getting out of it here. Whoa! Ow! This here is a Parmac 12-volt shocker. They're pretty good little shockers. They don't have the power I need out here anymore. We've been in really bad droughts. As you can see, we have some pretty bad kochia weed problems, and that's actually what we're doing out here. We're fencing off a bunch of this kochia weed. It's just almost too late. The pollination's almost done, but there's still a lot of good feed value in this stuff. So if you got tumbleweeds out there, don't be afraid to go feed them, man. We do it all the time. People talk about nitrates, yada yada this, yada yada that. Just go get it. So what we're doing here today is we are putting in a much more powerful shocker. I had to kind of custom get some parts and pieces here and pieces there. But basically what I'm doing is I'm swapping out this 12-volt shocker, which is a pretty powerful shocker in most situations. I think this is putting out maybe 2 joule, 3. This is an older one, so it might be pushing 3. But the newer ones, I think, barely push 2 joules out. Not that impressive. I'm going to swap it out for a much more powerful shocker and shocking system as a whole. So let's get rid of this bad boy. It kept the cows in for a few days, so that's good. Until Amazon could deliver my parts. Here. This is my base. I have a good base. If you can see right here, there's a little bit of shade blocking some stuff out, so I'm going to knock these weeds down around here real quick. Something is biting me. Oh man. Ouch. Stinking flies. Has anybody ever figured out how to start one of these dang weed whackers? Damn weed whacker. Next thing to do is bring a solar panel in the shocker. So this is the actual solar panel I'm using. You know, the old one was maybe this much of a solar panel. So we've got a whole lot more charging capability here to power the shocker coming at us. Perfect. Okay. And when I put in this is just a 12-volt deep cycle battery here. So when you get your batteries, you want to get one with quite a bit of power to it. This one I think has 650 cold cranking amps to it. So a pretty darn powerful shocker or battery. And you're going to need that to keep that dang shocker powered. This is the next thing you really need with a bigger solar panel like this. Otherwise you'll fry your battery. This is just a 12-volt regulator. So this right here is a 100-watt solar panel, and I think if you check the voltage, it'd be putting out like 60 volts, maybe more. So this just makes sure that it syncs with the battery. It's a pulse. It's called pulse width modulation, and the way that works is batteries send out a pulse of electricity, I guess, and it senses that pulse and it returns that same amount of power, but just a touch more. So it just keeps that battery from overcharging and basically ruining that battery. It's a little protection system for everything. Super easy, just plug and play. The connectors connect into the back of that solar panel. This was all one deal, the solar panel and this to charge the battery. It was about 160 bucks on Amazon, and yeah, it's super worth it to keep this power system regulated the way we need it to. Hopefully you can see that down in there. I'll take it a little closer here. If you can read it, So this one right here, that says my solar panel is pumping into the next lot at the bottom, so underneath that 12.8 there. This first one is my solar panel working. The next one tells me the charge of my battery, which I'm not surprised. This battery was powering another shocker for the last, I don't know, 3 days or so, 4 days. And then that last one tells me it's going to load, but I don't have a load on this coming out of this. I'm gonna hook my shocker straight to the battery because it pulls a pretty hard shot in an incremental time. But anyways, long story short, this thing tells me everything's working right, which is good. So let's get the shocker out. So let's get the shocker out next and hook this bad boy up, see what we can do. I've got one big ground rod here. That one goes down pretty far. And then I've got another ground rod underneath this wood stuff here. So I only have 2 ground rods going right now. I should probably have about 4 for this shocker, but it will work. And I'll put some water in there too to help ground it out. So this is the shocker we're putting in today. This is a 12 volt Cyclops super shocker. This is a mean mamma jamma. It's putting out, or it's holding 16, but it's cranking 12 joules out down the fence line. And when you get these older fence lines like this one here, this is a barbed wire fence, and it's getting a little bit of rust in it. I don't know if you can see that very well. My foot in the spider hole. And you can see it is getting a little bit of rust in it, and what that does is that causes a little bit more resistance for it to be able to pump down and get, there we go. So as you can see, there's a little bit of rust on this old fence, and a lot of people might give us a hard time about using this barbed wire. I love barbed wire electric fences because they provide a little bit of extra connectivity in dry years. See that barb? It'll go through the hair of an animal and make better contact with its skin. And yeah, it's the only way to build an electric fence. So this is what I would call a permanent electric fence. That was super cheap and super easy to put up. You can space your posts out. I think our posts are spaced out 50 feet apart. But this will hold cattle in. We've done it many years, many times. People will say, oh, don't use electric or barbed wire for electric fence. If you keep your fences tight and you have a halfway decent corner, you'll be fine. Even with high tensile, I actually prefer high tensile barbed wire for electric fences over this is just a standard old barbed wire that came over on the Mayflower. But yeah, let's hook this shocker up. Also, I'll put a link to these shockers in the bottom of the video there or whatever, so you guys can get them. You can't buy these in stores. I've not found this in store. This was kind of a special order deal. There is one more 12 volt shocker out there that's a little bit more powerful. You can get them up to, I think, 18 joules. They're made by Gallagher, which is pretty good. This one here was about 700 bucks. So pretty pricey, but when you figure out the general scope of things, I was able to come out here and take advantage of all this kochia weed and basically free feed here. So is 700 bucks a lot for a shocker? Yes. Is $700 cheap to take care of the cows for the next couple months? Yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's a super bargain deal. But yeah, let's get this thing hooked up, see how it shocks, and yeah, party on, Wayne. The thing I like about these Cyclops shockers too is they got really heavy duty connectors. So you can really put a good chunk of wire into that connector. And that's one thing to think about too. You know, when you're connecting these things up, you want something that you can connect a lot of wire to, because just like right here, you could probably push the joules through there, but it's like, and what I'm talking about is the thickness of the wire. So I can put a lot more electricity through this wire than I can this wire. This only needs 12 volts to power this shocker, but this shocker amplifies those 12 volts into, gosh, I think it's like 12,000 by the time it's out there on the fence line. So is what you need to do to carry those 12,000 volts is a pretty healthy connection. And that's what I like about these connectors on these Cyclops shockers. They are heavy duty. Get them nice and tight. And then I'm going to show you one other trick before I plug the sucker in, because I'm afraid of this thing. This shocker will hurt you. It is no joke. And this is just water, but I've put a little bit of salt in there, and that salt really helps the conductivity of electricity going down through things. And you just pour that around your grounds. There's another ground over here, and that ground also has a connector here. So I guess technically there's about 3 grounds on there. But yeah, so a little water, and especially a little salt water, really makes that ground work and work better. So this is not what I call a totally finished product, but it is a very workable product. So what I'd like to do is get a box where I could, you don't want to enclose these batteries in a box, especially off a panel this big, because it will produce off gases, which is hydrogen gas, very explosive, with a bunch of electrical components turning on and shutting off. That's just a recipe for disaster. But what you can do and should do is probably have that enclosed and this thing enclosed, but we're not going to worry about it, because why would we want to worry about that? Well, it's clicking. It's clickety ticking. And the cows will come along here and they'll learn to stay away from this pretty quickly, especially this close to the ground. And right now we're powering about 2 miles of fence of this old rusted wire, so it's pulling a pretty hefty amount of electricity out of this shocker. But yep, pretty easy. A 100-watt solar panel right there, charging a 12-volt battery through, if you can see it right under there, through a pulse width modulator, going into a Cyclops 12-joule solar shocker. So yeah, this is pretty mean. Let's see what we're actually getting out of it here. See if you guys can see this or not. God, I don't want to touch that. Yeah. Pretty good. Pretty mean shock. Let's see what it looks like if I touch the actual ground rod. The actual ground to this thing. There we go. Let's see if we can get out of it now. See if it's any more or less. Whoa! Ow! Okay, so that tells me right there that we're having a pretty, we need some more ground rods. Oh man, that was a loud zap, guys. So that's where this shocker should be probably shooting juice to. Man, that is mean.